years. And this event is part of our All Digital Weeks campaign. And actually today we have the launch event of the 5th week of the campaign, where the overarching topic is improving STEM and STEAM skills for the society. And this is a very important action also of the Digital Education Action Plan that we would like to support. That's the Action 13 of the Digital Education Action Plan. But what is our Digital Weeks campaign? So every year we organize this campaign to empower people, to enhance their digital skills, and highlighting the importance of digital inclusion and empowerment. It's organized by All Digital Network. It's been running since 2010. And since then, we have helped about 1.4 million people to get online for the first time, enhance their digital skills, really to fully exploit the benefits of digital transformation. The motto of the 2022 campaign is enhance your digital skills, call to action for all Europeans to take an active part for a better future. And how we organize the campaign is that anyone can join it by organizing an event or a training program on digital competencies, and connect their event, put their events on the map of the All Digital Weeks campaign at alldigitalweeks.eu website. The campaign takes place online and offline in digital competence centers, libraries, community centers, schools, and other venues across Europe. We have supporters of this year. The European Commission is supporting the campaign, and we have industry partners, Microsoft, Huawei, and Certiport are our main supporters. And we also have a number of strategic partners, European associations, European networks, who help promote and disseminate the events of the campaign. So as I said, this is the 5th week of the campaign, and through a number of events, we are going to focus on the main theme, which is STEM and STEAM skills for society, and encouraging girls and women's participation in STEM careers and subjects. And today we have the launch event. Tomorrow we organize in the afternoon a webinar or how to create a gender equality in this sector or in this challenge. On Wednesday we will have a webinar on presenting policy recommendations of a project supporting STEAM educators. And on Thursday we will have the closing event of the All Digital Weeks campaign. Thank you very much again, and I really appreciate our speakers and guests who have joined today. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Claudia Matera, to present the speakers, introduce the speakers, and moderate the discussion. Thank you again.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled today to moderate and introduce the discussion around this topic. So when we talk about STEM, we mentioned that we're talking about science, technology, engineering, and maths. And the A component that sometimes we include within that those fields are the arts. So for this reason, we have invited speakers from a diverse kind of perspective to join our panel discussion, and we're looking forward to provide an overview with a specific focus regarding the gender balance within these fields. So we're going to discuss also what kind of factors are at the basis of the actual situation and which activities, programs, policies we could promote and further develop. So our speakers, I'm glad to introduce Leonie Bultynck, that is the Assistant Policy Officer of the European Commission, DG ERC, that is exactly focused on Action 13, as Peter was also mentioning, of the DAP, and she's going to talk about this more. I'm also glad to have with us Jyoti Gupta from Bantani Education. Jyoti has more a background coming from management and accountancy side, and she's operations and finance lead at Bantani. I'm thrilled to have with us also Michelle Escoffery, that is president at PRS for music. Michelle has a background a creative background, as she is an award-winning singer-songwriter. At the same time, she has also a good combination of entrepreneurship, and her presidency at PRS is also a key point within this discussion. Last but not least, William Easton, head of Futuregames and at Changemakers. William has a sound experience within education, especially in teaching, within the arts, but not just within the arts. And we're going to hear for more also from his perspective. I would immediately start our session. And thank you, Peter. I am going to share with you the message that the policy officer shared for us, recorded for us.
Hi, so my name is Leonie Bultynck. I am super happy to be here today, and I want to thank All Digital for inviting me to speak on in the All Digital Week on this super important topic of STEM and STEAM, of gender equality in STEM and STEAM in both education and the professional field. I am very, very happy to participate. I'm very sorry, on the other hand, that I'm not there live. I hope it will be a fruitful discussion. I mean, I'm pretty sure, looking at the other speakers, I think yeah, so I wish I was there, but let me sort of dive into my presentation. I have made some slides as well to help me with to keep a bit of a red line through my story that I'm about to tell. My name. Before I go into the slides, I just want to introduce myself, maybe 1 minute. So I work for, I'm a policy assistant in DG EAC, so the Director General for Education and Culture, Youth and Sport here in the European Commission. I've joined the Commission in 2019, and I worked as part of the digital education core team ever since. So my unit is Unit C4. We mainly deal with the implementation of our digital education action plan, and since a year or so I've been responsible for working on one action in particular, which is Action 13, enhancing women participation in STEM. Hence, this is why I am here, of course. I will now try and share my slides. Hopefully that works. So, and then go to presenters view. There we go. So I will start my presentation a bit on the key facts and figures. I think many of us actually know these key facts and figures and have seen or read these before, but I think, it's always good to set the scene with them and just look at how severe this issue we are talking about today actually is. So the bad news, let me start with the bad news. So when we look at PISA, or other similar studies that measure the performance of 15-year-olds in their abilities in math, for example, we can see that there's absolutely no difference when it comes to girls and boys. They perform equally well, and in some cases, actually, women or girls outperform boys in in math. So there's absolutely no gender performance gap. However, when we then see later on, when the girls get older and start choosing careers and studies, you see that they are dropping off. So today, only 1 in 3 STEM graduates is female, while only 22% of ICT graduates is female. So even when we break it down further, we can see that particularly engineering and ICT are sort of the fields where the underrepresentation is the most severe. This, of course, translates also into the job market, into the labor market, where only 19% of tech sector jobs are held by females. And this is even less and even a smaller amount when we go to management positions. So what we see here, these boys and girls who are equally expected to work in science-related or STEM-related fields, no matter, when they get older, they start to drop off. And this is what we call the leaky pipeline. We can also see further in the professional field when women, less women in any case, actually choose to be self-employed. But even when they do, and they're in technical professions, they are again heavily underrepresented. So there's only 24% of them there. The good news, because I don't want to start off completely with, a very sad note, there's slight good news. These numbers have been changing very slowly, but there is a trend specifically when it comes to female scientists and engineers of it going upwards. So according to the SHE figures, the latest one from last year, we went from 39% to 41% in 2020. So if you want to know more about these numbers or really go into depth on where they come from, I would highly recommend the SHE Figures report. It's an annual report. It's published by RTD, and it focuses on women's position in innovation and research. So I also have tried to put as many QR codes in my presentation as possible, so you can always find the link. Then here's more of a breakdown again of a graph of numbers. Here you see the 2021 Women in Digital Scoreboard. So this is based on the DESI, the Digital Economy and Society Index, which measures member states' performance in their internet use, their internet user skills, and specialist skills and employment. And here you can see it for girls or women only. And you see the numbers are quite high. You see 85% use the internet regularly in the EU. On average, 54% have at least basic digital skills. But when you look at the males, you see that they are higher. So again, we see a gap. Again, we see, even in internet use and basic digital skills, we see a gap. What are then the main barriers? How come we have this leaky pipeline? There are, again, many studies about this. One I refer to here on my slide again from last year, which was published by the Commission. I see there are many barriers, but what I see as main ones that I keep reading about is this idea of a confidence gap. It's gender stereotypes and it's a lack of role models. So confidence gap, this is quite incredible. So studies show that, girls and boys between 16 and 24, they are super skilled to use digital technologies in their daily lives. So their skills, their basic digital skills are really similar. But where the difference lies is confidence. So boys will more likely say that they have, they feel comfortable about, for example, using digital devices they are less familiar with, while girls will do that to a way lesser extent. So I think in this study, it was about 73% of boys say they are comfortable, while only 63% of girls say the same. So this is a 10% percentual difference, so quite significant. When it comes to gender stereotypes, of course, STEM fields, they're usually culturally, let's say on average, seen as a masculine field. And teachers and parents often are sort of unconsciously affected by this bias, and therefore, in some cases, also underestimate girls' abilities in, for example, math. So when you think about that, it is an unconscious bias. It's a larger cultural systemic issue, but it has really real life consequences, because we just saw this idea of a leaky pipeline. That's a very concrete, you know, eye-opening numbers that show you that these types of implicit unconscious biases can have real life, you know, very severe consequences. So there also is, of course, a lack of role models. A good way to think about this is that when you have a textbook, or you know, when you look at a picture of a doctor, 99% this will be a man. Even in schools textbooks, 99% this will be the case. So often we don't make visible enough the women and girls who are there already in the field being innovators. So why is it important? There is, of course, the sort of economical argument that goes into the skills gap, because Europe is facing an incredible skills gap, and many companies, over 60%, they actually report that they have a need for a specific advanced digital skills profile that they just cannot find on the labor market. So having more women there would actually help that skills gap and overcome that obstacle for innovation and economic growth. It would also lead to more GDP, but I think, which, you know, can be used as a sort of economic business case. But I think more, you know, even on top of that, it's just, you know, sort of the right thing to do. It's the equitable thing to do when you think about it, because if you have our society today is a digital one, and it's becoming increasingly digital and formed by digital technologies and skills. And if you don't have women or equal representation between the genders of people who have and possess these skills, but also design, for example, AI systems that are responsible for hiring cases, or even, you know, AI systems that are implemented in healthcare needs. Today, those codes, those algorithms for those AI systems are being written by predominantly male, white as well, male white laborers, or so professionals. And if, you know, who simply, because of this unconscious bias and this lack of diversity, we risk upscaling, but in the wrong way, you know, these unconscious biases that are already there, and actually harming women in the process. So if we want to go to an inclusive digital transition, if we, you know, what the Commission is putting forward as an absolute priority, then we need more women at the table. It's just the fair thing to do. So what is the Commission doing about it? I will tell you later with some examples that the Commission is actually having a lot of initiatives in this field that go way beyond also the Digital Education Action Plan. But today, of course, I focus on our action plan, and specifically our Action 13. So our Digital Education Action Plan, I think, I hope some of you are familiar with it. It's a 7-year long-term vision for high-quality inclusive education and training in the digital age. It's all about integrating technology in education and improving digital skills. It's part of a larger policy context, so it feeds into, for example, the Digital Compass, which is our larger digital strategy that has set different digital targets by 2030. For example, a minimum of 80% of the population should have basic digital skills by 2030. That's one of those targets the Digital Education Action Plan contributes to. It also contributes to the Next Generation EU policy priority. So this is this extraordinary funding mechanism that is helping member states with the recovery and resilience after the coronavirus pandemic. Most of these recovery resilience plans have now been submitted, and I can now say that about 13.8 billion will be dedicated. You know, a member state chose to invest about 13.8 billion euro in digital education reforms. Then our action plan, it basically has two strategic priorities. Today, we're mostly focusing on the second one, which is about enhancing digital skills and competences for the digital transformation. Here, you also see an overview of all of the actions and initiatives, just to make sure. We're talking today about one specific one, women's participation in STEM, Action 13, but in fact, our action plan is way larger than that and also covers, for example, AI or disinformation, you know, digital education content framework. So it's really large, and it encompasses all educational sectors. So it goes from higher education to elementary, secondary, to non-formal, informal, etc. Lifelong learning as well. So today I'm focusing on women's participation in STEM, so Action 13. Its overall strategic objective is to enhance women's participation in STEM studies and careers. It wants to ensure inclusion of women in the digital economy, and it wants to do that in 3 separate ways. So, or through 3 different sub-strands. So one is Girls Go Circular, one is organizing girls and women STEAM festivals, and the other is called is more transversal, is not necessarily a concrete project, but it's the inclusion of sort of having STEM as a priority in Erasmus, in the annual work program of the Erasmus Plus program. So today, or the annual work program of 2020, 2021, 2022, all had STEM as a priority in Erasmus Plus, and in 2023 we aim to even make this, you know, a stronger presence and to include a very clear gender dimension. So I will go and talk a bit more about Girls Go Circular, just to flag this initiative, but because it's one of our most successful ones. So what is it? It's an online learning program. It's for girls in secondary school between 14 and 18, and this program, it's divided into learning modules that deal with topics related to the circular economy. So it's about plastics, it's about sustainable fashion, metals, etc. And the goal really is for these girls to really go into these challenge-based assignments and tasks together with their teachers in class, and by doing so they're using they both gain digital and entrepreneurship skills. So Girls Go Circular basically reframes STEM not in the abstract, but really around concrete challenges. It goes hand in hand with the idea of the STEAM approach to add arts to STEM. So it adds a real world context around the circular economy into these STEM fields. It stimulates problem solving. It's about collaboration, inquiry, critical thinking, and all of this through using a digital platform. So in 2021, we managed to reach over 10,000 girls, and by 2027, we want to go to 40,000 in total in more than 10 countries. So Fest, this is the other part of Action 13. This I can sort of explain to you a bit of the vision, but the project in reality has just kicked off in January. It's a 3-year project managed by DG EAC as well as DG Grow and Deloitte, which is the contractor. So here STEAM, so E before STEAM, goes into entrepreneurial or represents entrepreneurship. The goal here is to organize both physical events as well as set up an online community, an STEAM community for both girls and women. The girls will be between 9 and 18. The women are between 18 and 99. It's all about improving their digital, again, and entrepreneurial competences, and it will be done by these physical STEAM fests. For the girls, these will focus on, for example, for the young girls, it will be games. It will be, about learning about robotics and coding, but in a fun, light atmosphere, creating this safe space with peers where they can experiment, where they can be creative, and support each other, and exchange on their interests. For the women, it's exactly the same, but it will be more on really concrete skills like financial literacy or building a mini enterprise. So it's about creating this community. It's about women supporting women, and it's also about bringing stimulating mentorship and stimulating role models, right? Because we're going to bridge, of course, these girls fests with these women fests, so they can also inspire each other. The first Easton Fest will be actually a girls' Easton Fest in Belgium, and it will take place in June of this year. So beyond the Digital Education Action Plan, as I said before, there's many initiatives around the Commission, not only within DG EAC, that stimulate gender equality in STEM and ICT. Our Commissioner in particular, Maria Gabriel, is a big advocate for girls in STEM, and she's behind a lot of initiatives that I will now mention. I will do it briefly, but just to give you an idea of what's going on around the Commission. For example, the first one, gender equality plans in Horizon. So Horizon Europe is, of course, it's really large, or the largest funding mechanism in Europe for innovation from the Commission. And since a couple of months, public bodies, research organizations, and higher education institutions who want to have funding from or apply for funding from Horizon need to have a gender equality plan in their application, or show that they have one in their institution. So this tackles it in a very systemic way. The Women Tech EU initiative. This is a grant of €75,000 for female founders and co-founders of early stage deep tech startups. So this is really targeting women that are just in the phase of beginning their company, who need, a little push, or a big push actually. The EU Women for Future campaign that goes into, making visible these role models. It's more of a communication campaign. It puts the spotlight on extraordinary women active in research, innovation, education, culture, and sport. So across the whole portfolio of our commissioner. And then maybe lastly, but these are just examples, we have way more, and we have, of course, hundreds of Erasmus program projects. So the EU Prize for Women Innovators, this is a prize for game-changing innovations by women entrepreneurs. It's for both women and for rising innovator women. So there's two categories, a prize of €100,000 each. There are 3 prizes per category. And just maybe to say that the deadline of this prize is actually the 18th of August, if I'm not mistaken, of this year. So you are more than welcome to apply. So how can you help? Maybe from the perspective of the Commission, but also All Digital, for example, I think we have many projects already there. We have hundreds of Erasmus Plus projects dedicated to STEM. We have a lot of initiatives run by the Commission that I just explained that deal with this topic. I think and I know All Digital has multiple projects also in this field. So what will be important at this point, in my opinion, is to take stock, is to identify what these projects are, and then identify what works and upscale these best practices. Of course, there's also highlighting role models. I think we can do more in that aspect, make them even more visible. I think we can also increase exposure of these girls through, for example, career counseling, where you bring career counseling, where you inform sort of girls about the wide variety of STEM and ICT professions. I think a lot of girls don't have insight in what it means, a STEM or ICT profession, and what this type of field actually entails. And this also goes into my next point of cross-sectoral cooperation. So bring schools together with public and private sector, to have on-site or virtual visits, to have job shadowing, to really expose these girls to the STEM field. and different STEM profiles. I think these are some of the main things you can also help in your respective positions and functions, from the private sector, the public institutions, the more civil society association point of view. Just maybe as a last, before I stop here, the Digital Education Hub, I put it there because it's our flagship initiative of the Digital Education Action Plan, which fosters cross-sectoral cooperation. It does exactly that. It brings private with public together, and together with education and training institutions on an EU level. At the heart of it will be a community of practice, and this will be up and running in June of this year. So if you would be interested in this type of work, please keep an eye out on our Twitter account as well, which you can see right here, to register in case you would be interested. So you can reach me here on my email, as I said before, if you would have any questions, or if you would raise any points or see any synergies with what I just explained, please feel free to just drop me a line. Yeah, thank you very much. I wish you a fruitful and inspiring discussion.
Okay, so let's now, so we had a lot of inputs here coming from policy officer Leonie, Bultynck, and I would now, starting from potentially from these points that are more, let's say, wide in terms of the overall sectors, many sectors, and across Europe, looking at not just the stats, but also what kind of activities and what kind of also funds actually the Commission has already put it in place. I would now move to, let's say, more kind of a panel discussion now with our guests, where to understand together and further provide the overview of the situation of female presence in specific sectors. So, of course, the question is to Jyoti, looking at entrepreneurship more specifically, and would be also nice to hear from you about the Entrecomp community that you also host at Bantani Education, and have an overview coming from Michelle regarding music. Because then within music, of course, technology is in place since the very beginning till the music that we listen thanks to technology, that could be remotely but also live at the events, but also more generally speaking within the music sector. So apart from, let's say, more technical, technological kind of roles, what is the situation? And from William, regarding gaming, and not just gaming, a field. So what if there might be any specific job roles, for instance, where women are more likely to cover, and potentially also thinking about, when referring to gaming, into esports, for instance. So Jyoti, please.
Thank you, Claudia. I first want to thank All Digital for inviting me here, and I'm glad to be, speaking on behalf of Bantani Education. Very quickly, I will give a brief introduction about Bantani, who do not know about Bantani Education. It's a Belgium non-profit association, and we work collaboratively to drive entrepreneurial and creative learning in Europe. And we bring together extensive policy and practical experience working with the policymakers, educators, community, and private sector to embed high quality entrepreneurial and learning practices and policies into the formal and non-formal formal learning. And coming to a question, Claudia, very specifically now on the gender balance in entrepreneurship. If we have to look at the statistics, we see like there is quite an underrepresentation of women in the field of entrepreneurship. So For example, women represent 51% of the European population, but only 32% of the EU self-employed and 31% of the startup entrepreneurs. If you will look at the startup founders, you will see that only 14.8% of the startup founders are women. If you talk about the capital investments, you will find that 93% of the capital invested in the European companies in 2019 went to all male startup companies. So this is evidence that the women entrepreneurs are missing out funding all over the world. And in addition, you will see that the women entrepreneurs, they tend to start smaller businesses and earn less. I will not go into the overall situation of STEM and ICT because I think it was very clearly and very nicely explained by Leonie. But having said all this situation about the women entrepreneurship, I still think that, you know, they are making significant contributions to the global economy and society. I was going through the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2020 survey, which is based on the input from 43 countries, and an impressive estimated 274 million women globally are involved in business startups. And in addition to 139 million women are having owners or managers of established businesses. So there is a drive of women entrepreneurship, but much of the conversation over the years has centered on increasing the number of female entrepreneurs. Now, what we need to see is this conversation evolve to focus on high growth activities. So many women around the world are making a significant impact despite various barriers in the system, but that impact growth opportunities. It is imperative that more focus is placed on helping women entrepreneurs and business owners to build high growth companies. Even at Bantani, we have seen that there has been a lot of interest in key competence development overall on the Intercomp, which has really showed what it really means in terms of practical competencies. Lots of work is happening to help teachers understand how to develop this area across curriculum through learning, whatever subject in whatever way. But I think more work is needed on mainstreaming this into education.
Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you very much. The numbers are quite impressive, I would say.
Yes, they are.
Actually, I wasn't aware of them.
That's why I wanted to bring some of the worldwide aspect to it, to see that it is improving. Even in the educational sector, it is improving. The entrepreneurship education is kicking. It's just to, you know, start finding how much will be the impact.
Definitely,
yes.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Michelle, please.
Wow, well, that just blew me away. It's a pleasure to be here. In terms of music, my involvement in music, it's still dire in one sense. So as president of the PRS, we have only 18% of women female songwriters, and we have a membership of 160,000 members. And then when you break that down further in terms of the high earning songwriters, that then whittles down to under 500 female songwriters. In terms of education also, there's been an increase, and I can say I've been in education now for about 15 years, and there's been an increase in music courses where women are coming on as producers and learning, you know, degrees in production, but that is not translating into industry. So you still have hardly any female producers in studios. One of the things I'm currently working on strategic development at ACM, and one of the things is they are not getting female sound engineers. So we are now looking at how do we do a call out and actually maybe do a specific course geared at female sound engineers, mix engineers. One of the things in terms of board directory, for our board, there's currently 27, I think it is, including management. And out of that, there are only 4 women. On the songwriters side, there's 11 of us. There are only 2 women, and I'm the only Black woman. I'm the only woman of color there, period. There is some good news, though, in terms of processing for PRS. We are processing a hell of a lot of data In 2021, we processed 27 trillion uses, and this has increased by 5 trillion of the previous year. Our staff split is looking pretty good in transformation. In our transformation team, there are 13 women out of 24 colleagues. This means that there's 54% of women on the team. And in our CIO team, our Chief Information Office, which covers data analytics and IT, there are 24 out of 101 colleagues. So there's 24% of women in that team. And we've been working quite hard in really looking at data and data transformation. And our CEO's mission is, within the next 5 years, that she really wants to get that gender balance up and get it up to 50%. Speaking as a songwriter, being in the room, and one of the reasons why I decided to go into vocal production was because there were no women in the room, and struggling to get your point across, to be heard, to say, I don't like that take. Actually, I think you need to add some more reverb. And it's like, oh, what do you know? So combating that, that's why I decided to actually study and look at vocal production, so that our voices are present within that room. But I was thinking about, when I'm hearing about all these stats, I was actually thinking, how many times have I been in a room and actually had either a female producer or a mix engineer or engineer on the board? And I can't really say that I've encountered female engineers in the room. So there is still a lot of work to do in that regard.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it's really combating, really, as you said. And you are also bringing on board another aspect that is also crucial here, that is diversity, actually. So it's a kind of a double fight, in a sense. On one hand, the gender kind of balance, but also the diversity balance. That, of course, is it's not additional, because it's, of course, equally important, but actually looking around us, apart from the statistics, I believe that we can all witness that it is something that we are all trying to move forward. Thank you very much. And William, please, now, after all these women, like you, I would say, because now, we have said a lot on that.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to be in this group of lots of women, I have to say, when we're talking about this particular issue. I certainly would feel very uncomfortable if it was a lot of men talking about this issue. I'm not going to speak on the worldwide figures. I'll just give the rough ideas of what the situation looks like in Sweden. The stats just came out very recently. 21.4% is the number of women working in the games industry in Sweden, which is 27% of new recruits, but it still hasn't increased since last year. It's roughly at the same level. As an education, we're much higher than that. We're around about 34% when we're not seeing the effect in the industry. 90% of my students get employed within 6 months of graduation. In fact, most of my students get employed before they've graduated. But we're not seeing the effects, and it's clearly a problem. What we see from our side is that there's a number of different issues here. I think all of us have probably read this kind of classic badly written piece of science from Jordan Peterson, where he says that if you look at the greater levels of equality, why doesn't Scandinavia excel? And it's sometimes called the Nordic gender equality paradox. Of course, it's a totally disingenuous argument, because it doesn't actually confront so many of the other variables that actually stop women from actually getting employment in certain areas. Not least of one of the most worrying ones is that because in the tech industries, particularly in gaming, the salaries are very high. They're very high salaries. It tends that more men aim for those salary levels. This you can see in global stats, you can see the same thing happening us. So the stats for Sweden might be worse than the stats for another country, even though the equality levels are higher. It's not a positive situation. What we do as a school, we look at a number of different things, but I think perhaps the most important is we look at diversity across all its aspects and don't just deal with gender. And we find that actually triggers the changes that we actually would like to encounter. So one of them is, for example, on thresholds. We've removed interviews from the process of application. It just simply we stop a lot of people getting into schools because they are not good at actually doing the stand-up and able to do that. Just don't do it. We do it in another way. We have another aspect, because we're not a university, we're a vocational education. We can use validation of entry in different ways. We can validate people. One of the things we have discovered is that if we remove the maths requirement, which is a maths exam taken at the age of 15, from an application to an education you're taking when you're 25, we doubled the number of women who had the validation to enter the school. In other words, it's all about when you get good at maths. It's not about whether you're good at maths, it's when you get good at maths. And that is not the same. Again, this is a disingenuous piece of argument. The third thing we work a lot with is in terms of expectations, where the expectations of roles that you might have when you leave are individually set. They're not set as a single block. That also changes what we can do, which is a positive thing in Sweden, because 34% of the managerial roles within the games industry are held by women. So we have a lot of women CEOs running games companies, but we don't have the bulk within the programming and in some of the more kind of technical areas. And the last thing is that the nature of what we do when we make games, it is about diversity. I mean, the future of games is diversity. It's obvious. We make games for everybody. So the content is constantly changing. Some of the best companies around in Sweden today are Hazelight. You probably saw, if anybody follows the gaming world, they won a number of awards now. They won 2 BAFTAs last week, for example. And the game they have made is called It Takes Two. It's about 2 children who make models of their own parents, a woman and a man, who are in a divorce situation. And then you have to play 2 people together. One takes a male role, one takes a female role, in order to bring them back together. And then if you're successful, they come back to living in a happy life with their children again. Now, this has got nothing to do with the traditional notion of what people think is a successful game, a sort of shoot 'em up, a kind of hack and slash or whatever. It's about actually genuine looking at a kind of social relationships, which I think is actually increasingly what we've seen in terms of games development. So I'm not presenting a lot of positives here, but some. I think it's difficult to lift Sweden out of this, because we are, with all the Nordic gender equality paradox removed, Sweden's level of equality is actually quite genuine and really is makes a massive change. If I look at my student body and I look at the levels of diversity there, I think it's important. In terms of one specific issue, we offer not only do we have a scholarship that we give out to Elizabeth Tenier scholarship, which is given out every year through the whole of our organization to a woman who has excelled in the tech field, named after Elizabeth Tenier, who is one of the founding figures of our school, but also a leading mathematician in Sweden. Those kind of activities really do actually make a difference. And we also offer merit scholarships for students from across the country, across the world. All those kind of things. These are practical, real things you have to do every day. So.
Okay, thank you, William. No, it's a lot of things that are out there. Actually, we are all quite active, trying to, of course, kind of change the actual situation. And this is a bit the next point, let's say, that I would like to point out, because we have heard just from the 3 of you, actually, how complex is the situation, because each of you has added on top of what already, is, let's say, it could tend to be quite of a straightforward kind of issue that is not so easy in terms of it's not so simple. There's a lot on top of that make it more complex. So I would do a second turn, let's say, where to ask 2 aspects, actually, concerning what's about the time. So on one side, what do you think was kind of is the reason why of this specific situation? feel free to refer also to what the policy officer Leonie was saying. So is it more a cultural type of thing? Is it more into education? William was making a point. So it is on the one, when he was saying it is on the one you learn maths. So on one side, I would like you to say what could be the main reason why of this situation, and then on the other side, what could we do to rebalance this situation practically? Jyoti, please, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I think most of the reasons or of the disbalance is something which already Leonie has said, which is most about the underrepresentation because of the traditional gender roles and stereotypes, But I think one thing which has really come to the notice for when it comes to entrepreneurship is, I think, unequal sharing of household and care responsibilities, which it means that many women choose to reduce their working hours. If I have to give you the statistics, 30% of women in the EU work part-time compared to 8% of men. This can make it more harder for the women to progress in their careers as compared to men. And also there is a massive impact of COVID on women entrepreneurs because of the increased time needed for care for the families and children. In a UN Women report, which they did for COVID-19 rapid gender assessments in the Western Balkan countries, it shows that it was very convincingly that more women have an impact of COVID on entrepreneurship than men. So one of the biggest things I would say is unequal sharing of household and care. But barring all the other points which were already discussed, we have also seen, and during our work with the OECD and the other work that we do, that there are some invisible barriers. For example, let's say property ownership, that tends to be more in the name of men than in the name of the women, which can affect the access to finance for the women entrepreneurs. Also giving an example of access to social welfare support, which can be truly unequal. There is a current media campaign in Serbia to give equal access to maternity leave for employed versus the self-employed woman. So systematic inequality that practically is invisible. So you can see that there are both visible and invisible barriers which result in the underrepresentation and participation of women. And if I have to, give you some of the background of how we can develop, let's say, the entrepreneurship among women, I think the first step would be to create the learning pathways for empowering girls and women at a very beginning stage. So it is important to create awareness of entrepreneurship as one potential path that women can choose from the elementary school onwards, which is and then equal chances for women in STEM. This will help to narrow the gender gap and design better solutions and needs for women and girls. There would also be role models. I think is absolutely one of the most important solutions, which has already been discussed. But the stories about the young women and girls, it's like you cannot be what you cannot see, and mentors uniquely positioned to relate it. So it is a very, very effective tool. So to bring all these together, other than the initiatives that are being done by the commission, at Bantani, we are very passionate about women entrepreneurship, and we actively promote and support in the implementation of the entrepreneurship competence framework through different projects. We have built an entrepreneur and intercom community, and in particular, we will have a community space dedicated to sharing, learning, and networking on activity for women and girls, which will also be led by EIT Raw Material, who also lead the initiative across Europe. You have already heard about the Girls Go Circular, Girls Go Future. These will all be the synergies that we will be bringing in another project, which All Digital is also part of, to bring together all the intercom communities together and synergize into different projects to make sure they all learn together and grow together. There's one very interesting project which I want to mention here that we do is the Women's Learning Together, which is an initiative to build an online community for women aged 35 to 55 years. This is particularly for women who may have been impacted by having children and needing upskilling and reskilling as a result of being out of the workplace or having not been focused on developing a career for a while. So these are the few initiatives among a lot of more that are already going on and beyond. But I think I will stop here, keeping in mind the time that we have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.
No, thanks to you. I would love to talk for hours on that, but
yes,
yeah.
Certainly, me too.
But thank you for sharing also the good point in terms of, I like that you call them the invisible barriers, because this is something that is not just, you know, a one project type of action that we could do, or a program, you know, that you could put in place. So in terms of education and in terms of the support that we can provide is something that I believe is the similar approach that we're all having. But looking at recognizing and advocating that sense, those invisible barriers, I believe is also an additional point that we should also do for more. I mean, I say this also to myself, I mean, to us as all digital. So thank you for that very much. Michelle, from your side in here.
Yeah, in terms, one of the things that really jump out to me as well is the idea around confidence. We ran a campaign. I'm a trustee for the PRS Foundation, and we have a fund called the Hitmaker Fund, which is behind the scenes producers, writers that write for other people that are on the kind of cusp, the tipping point of really breaking through in the industry, and finding that there was such a disparity of women that actually applied. And when we did the research and started to reach out to women and saying, you know, you're great, you're on the cusp, why aren't you applying? What we have found is that men will look at, they have 7 out of 10 of the skills and they'll still apply. A woman will look and say, oh, I don't have those 3, I'm not going to apply. So it's really building that confidence to say you do have the skills, you do have the talent, and anything you don't know, you're going to be able to learn when you get into that space. It's also this, I don't really want to call it unconscious bias because I'm not sure that it is unconscious. This idea that women are less experienced. Oh, well, you're less experienced for that role. Maybe you should do it, you know, shadow someone for 2 years and then come into the role. We need to throw that out, and we need to really empower women to know that, you know, if you've been in a role for 12 years as deputy general manager, then you can definitely be general manager because you have that experience. So I think it's a case of educating women and empowering them to know that they can go for those roles, they can go for the funding, they can go for those seats at the table, and celebrating when they do get there as well. I think that communication is a huge thing, being able to speak. And I'm a shouter. So if somebody's doing something great, I like to shout about it and say, well, actually, that person's really great. Maybe you should connect with them and see what they can bring to the party. So I think that there needs to be a lot more of that going on, where we recognize each other's skills and talk about it and put people forward for opportunities that maybe somebody else would not put them forward for.
Thank you, Michelle. In here, yeah, you're raising a great point. That is the recognition of the abilities and the talents, let's say, in that sense. And this is something that also, I mean, Michelle and I have experienced actually in past years on other activities and projects, and recognition in that sense when referred to skills, and the confidence also in that sense is in 2 ways. One is with yourself, and the other side, you know, when you look at yourself really, and your example is appropriate. So I don't have all the 10 skills, but yeah, I'm good to do that. And also something that it needs to be done within a community. So when also the others, our peers, recognize the skills that we have. So also this one actually is a really great point. Thank you, Michelle.
And it's really empowering when we have men who are positive allies as well, who will actually speak up and say, actually, this person is great for that, for this job or this role, or it's really, really empowering too.
And this brings us also in saying that, yeah, and apart from, you know, women supporting women, having also a mixed kind of exchange could be also brilliant to have. William, I know we are kind of close to time, but
well, I obviously cannot answer the first question, the why. I mean, 2,000 years of odd discrimination, which doesn't seem to go. I don't even want to go there, but I would just re-emphasize what I said before. I think it's by approaching diversity in a slightly broader context to cover women and non-binary and all the other terms of functional variation that we take in, we strengthen ourselves by doing that. What we recognize is that we work with a kind of educational psychology based in connectivism that is essentially looks at diversity is principally adding to the capacity for intellectual understanding. Diversity brings around greater understanding. And then if we do it in the games world, we simply say it actually makes the better games. It's not complicated for us. It's just like, it's really obvious. So it's not, it's quite straightforward. I think that one of the things that we really emphasize, because of the nature of how you make games, it's always a collaboration. There is no possibility to do this on your own. And we teach Agile and Scrum and all that kind of like methods, because you have to do, if you can't work otherwise. Those things have a great opportunity of leveling out, changing hierarchies, moving people around, stopping people from being able to use traditional norms in terms of having control over others, because everybody is needed. So I really emphasize from my position that, yes, obviously, you know, gender is an incredibly important part of what we work with, but we work with a whole picture of what diversity is. And we really do try and struggle with this idea that when you do, because half of what we do is collaborative activity, they work together in teams. And as soon as you do that, you force people into actually accepting other points of vision, other points of perspective, whether it's cultural, whether it's gender specific, or whether it's age related, or whether it's about functional variation. So my personal feeling is that these two issues must not be separated. I think it's a danger if we do that, because it simply allows the opposition to it, traditional kind of pinpointing way of removing pinpointing on a problem and actually creating a disingenuous argument against why the power of diversity is actually the future of humankind. That's my last point.
Thanks. Thank you, William. I like to see diversity as a point that brings understanding. I like that really much. So thank you all for your inputs in here. And I just wrap up a bit and I call back Peter. I'm not sure, I don't see you now, but Peter, we have collected a lot of points here for all digital and our members actually to work on. So within the topic, of course, it's not just a matter of gender itself, it's also, of course, a matter of diversity, it's a matter of providing support, empowering, at the same time also potentially remodeling, in a sense, the infrastructure, where for infrastructure we mean more at funding kind of situation, also trying to remove those invisible barriers that would facilitate not just women, but generally speaking, everyone that has the ideas, has the skills, has the competencies to move forward their own career, join within STEM and STEAM kind of topics, and of course also have startups and entrepreneurs in general, businesses in general. So thank you very much for your contribution. And Peter, are you with us? I think he's on because he was visiting one of our members in Hungary, so I believe he has been captured by them. So thank you all. I, in any case, wrapped up the day. And next, I would just do two things now. First one if you would be happy with that, I would like to ask you to turn on your camera to have a pic all together that we can share, and we can also keep on our track for all the activities and events that we're doing now. Okay, I see people showing. There we go. Okay. Vic, tell me when you are ready for that.
Right, let's allow maybe a few more seconds. If somebody else wishes to be in the picture, please turn on your cameras and we can take a group picture. It's really good to see your faces. Thank you for joining us today. All right. All right, I think we can get a very nice shot. All right, 1, 2, 3. Smile. Let me double check if everything is in place. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vic.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you. And last thing, of course, this week we're going to have other events as anticipated by Peter at the beginning. So tomorrow on specifically on gender kind of aspects linked to our project we are carrying out, an Horizon project called Equals You. And on Wednesday, we will be focused more specifically on policies, recommendations, on STEAM kind of topics for educators. And on Thursday, we're going to wrap up these 5 weeks of events and all the topics we covered for this year or Digital Weeks campaign.